weight of his body, hear his whispers in her ear, and remember how she had cried, begging him to stop. But Josh didn't stop, and when it was over, he had leaned down and whispered, "You will never tell anyone. If you do, no one will believe you." Betty had wanted to scream, to run, to tell someone, but who would listen? Her mother was never around anymore. The maids worked under Honourable Bello and wouldn't dare say a word against his son. So she stayed silent. But silence didn't stop Josh. Miss Sandra woke up before dawn, as she did every morning. The small apartment she shared with her daughter Betty was modest but always clean. The sound of early morning hustlers calling out their wares drifted in from the streets of Lagos. She stretched, yawned, and looked at the clock on the wall. 5:30 a.m. She turned to the small mattress where her daughter lay, curled up under the thin blanket. Sandra's heart swelled with pride. Betty was her world, her reason for working so hard. She gently shook her. "Betty, wake up, my love. You need to start getting ready for school." Betty groaned, turning away. "Just 5 more minutes, Mama," she mumbled sleepily. Sandra chuckled and playfully tapped her daughter's leg. "No way, my dear. The early bird catches the worm. You know you're the best in your class. We can't be late." At the mention of school, Betty sat up, rubbing her eyes. She was an intelligent girl, always the top of her class, and her teacher, Miss Janet, often praised her for her hard work. As Sandra prepared breakfast, simple bread and tea, she thought about her life. Being a single mother had not been easy. Betty's father had left her as soon as he found out she was pregnant. She had struggled, working multiple jobs just to provide for her daughter. But things were about to change. A few days ago, she had been hired as a personal assistant to Honourable Bello, a wealthy businessman and politician. It was a dream come true. She would finally be able to give Betty the life she deserved. She turned to her daughter and held her hand. "I promise you, Betty, our lives are about to get better." Betty smiled. "I believe you, Mama." They finished breakfast, and Sandra walked Betty to the bus stop before rushing off to catch her own bus. Today was her first official day at work. Sandra adjusted her dress as she stood in front of the grand office building. The company was massive. She took a deep breath and walked in. The receptionist, a young woman with bright red lipstick, smiled at her. "Good morning, Ma. How may I help you?" "I'm Sandra, the new personal assistant to Honourable Bello." The receptionist nodded and made a quick call. "All right, you can go in. His office is on the top floor." Sandra entered the elevator, her heart pounding. This was her big opportunity. She had heard a lot about Honourable Bello. He was a rich and powerful man, respected in business and feared in politics. But she also knew that his reputation wasn't entirely clean. Some said he only cared about himself, pretending to be a good man in public while exploiting people behind closed doors. As the elevator doors opened, a young man in a suit approached her. "You must be Sandra," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Tony, Honourable Bello's Chief of Staff. Welcome." Sandra shook his hand and smiled politely. "Thank you." Tony led her to a large office where Honourable Bello sat behind a massive mahogany desk. He was a tall, dark-skinned man in his early 50s. His sharp eyes scanned her as she entered. "Ah, you must be my new assistant," he said in a deep voice. "Yes, sir." He gestured for her to sit. "I expect loyalty, hard work, and absolute discretion. This is a demanding job, but if you do well, you'll be rewarded. Do you understand?" Sandra nodded. "Yes, sir." "Good." He leaned back, studying her. "I have a meeting in 30 minutes. Get me a summary of today's agenda from Tony and organize the files on my desk." Sandra wasted no time getting to work. She moved quickly, proving she was competent and efficient. By the end of the day, Honourable Bello was impressed. "You're smart," he said. "I like that. Keep it up." Sandra smiled. "Thank you, sir." This was just the beginning. Betty sat in class, listening attentively as Miss Janet explained a mathematics problem. "Who can solve this on the board?" the teacher asked. Several hands shot up, but Miss Janet smiled at Betty. "Betty, come and solve it for us." Betty walked confidently to the board and solved the problem within seconds. "Excellent," Miss Janet clapped. "Everyone should learn from Betty. She's hard-working and dedicated." The class murmured in admiration, and Betty beamed with pride. At the end of the school day, Miss Janet called Betty aside. "How is your mother, dear?" "She's fine, Ma. She got a new job," Betty said excitedly. Miss Janet smiled warmly. "That's wonderful news. She deserves all the good things in life." Betty nodded. "Yes, Ma. She works so hard for me. One day, I'll make her proud and give her a better life." "You're already making her proud, my dear. Keep it up." Betty smiled and left. Sandra adjusted her dress as she stepped into Honourable Bellow's office, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor. It had been months since she started working as his personal assistant, and within that time her life had changed completely. At first, working for him had been nothing more than a job, an opportunity to provide a better life for her daughter, Betty. But as time passed, things took a different turn. Honourable Bellow, the wealthy businessman and politician, had taken a special interest in her. He was powerful, influential, and always surrounded by important people. Yet when they were alone, he spoke to her with a softness she hadn't expected. Sandra had been hesitant at first. She knew the kind of man he was. Selfish, calculating, and always looking out for himself. His reputation was filled with scandals, and though he tried to act like a good man in public, she had seen his true nature behind closed doors. But then, he started showing her a different side. He listened to her, praised her intelligence, and made her feel special in a way no man had before. The expensive gifts, the private dinners, the way he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. It was impossible to resist. And before she knew it, she had fallen in love with him. One evening, as they sat in his luxurious office, Bello reached for her hand. "Sandra, I want you in my life, permanently." She looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean, sir?" "I mean I want to marry you," he said firmly. "Be my second wife." Sandra's heart pounded. Marriage? It felt unreal. She had spent so many years struggling as a single mother, dreaming of a better life for herself and Betty. Now, here was a man offering her wealth, security, and a place beside him. "But your children?" she asked cautiously. "They live in the United States," he said dismissively. "They won't be a problem." Sandra hesitated. She knew people would talk, but was that more important than securing a good future for herself and her daughter? She had suffered enough. It was time for her to enjoy life. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the proposal. Then, she turned to Betty, who was lying beside her. "Betty, I have something to tell you." Betty turned to her mother. "What is it, Mama?" Sandra took a deep breath. "I'm in love." Mexico's eyes widened. "With who?" Sandra hesitated, then said softly, "Honourable Bello?" "What?" He asked me